Ooh, baby, it's cold outside. And because we can't do anything about the weather this time of the year, why don't you follow me into my kitchen where I'll warm you up with a nice bowl of hot homemade soup. Come on in. Oh. All right, why don't you have a seat right there and let me take off my coat and gloves and I'll be right with you. Hi, I'm Linda Karaberis and welcome to my kitchen. And boy, I love this time of the year. It's perfect for making comfort foods like soup. And doesn't it bring back a lot of great childhood memories? I mean, remember in those cold, snowy, wintry days when you'd be outside playing all morning, your mom would yell for you around noontime, "Hey, you kids come in here and have something to eat." So you'd go inside and what would you have? A nice steaming hot bowl of soup with a sandwich to go with it. So today what I'm going to show you are some simple homemade soups that you can create on those wintry days. All right, before we begin making our first soup, I'd like to go over some soup making basics. And why don't we start over here with your most important ingredient for any soup, which is fresh cold water. Now, cold water for a couple of different reasons. First of all, you don't want to start with hot because if you're using it from the tap, it's coming from the tank down in your basement that's been sitting there for, who knows how long. And more importantly, the second reason you always want to start with cold water is because it's the slow extraction that's created as the water is heating up from the ingredients in the pot that's going to create more flavor in your soup. So that's what's occurring when you start your soups with cold water. Now, the second ingredient I want to talk about that's very important for good soup making is base. And I just discovered this a few years ago and now I will never go back to bouillon. Now I have a couple of different kinds right here. One you can get in any supermarket. It's called Better Than Bouillon. And this other one I got from a food service supplier, so I don't know. This is Knorr. You may be able to get this, I'm not sure. But either way, you can find bases in your local supermarket. The biggest difference is, I'm going to read you the ingredients here. The very first ingredient on this one is turkey meat with natural juices. On this particular one, again, the first ingredient is roasted chicken and concentrated chicken stock. So it's not salt, and this is the big difference with the bases. These are going to be much more flavorful, and I promise you, you will not go back to bouillon after you try these. Yes, they're a little bit more expensive, but again, the results that you're going to get from using a real base there's just no comparison. And the next couple of ingredients I want to talk about are what you're going to finish your soups with. And I'll show you the garnishing of each soup at the end of the program. And what I want to talk about first is Parmigiano Reggiano. And it's a Parmesan cheese. And although you can get a lot of the Parmesan cheeses domestically, of course the best is in the country of origin where they originated is Italy. And this particular one, the Parmigiano Reggiano, it's always stamped on the rind like this. This is how you know it's authentic. And usually this is aged for a couple of years. And again, it's a little bit more expensive than your domestic Parmesan, but it is just makes such a difference. And this will last wrapped tightly 2 to 3 months easily. This is about the only thing I use it for is soups. So you just break off a chunk, and I will show you that later when we go to garnish the soups. And again, if you don't want to spring for the more expensive Parmigiano Reggiano, then by all means use the domestic Parmesan. But please, stop using the dried stuff that I know you keep on the side of your door in your refrigerator. This is just as easy to use, and I'll show you the couple of different graters I have. So you just pull the chunk of cheese out, grate it right over the soup, and put it away again. It's just as easy as opening up that jar of the dried stuff, and this just makes such a difference in the flavor. The next ingredient to finish a soup with is fresh parsley, and this whole bunch right here I purchased 79 cents. very inexpensive, and I just rinse it under cold tap water, shake it out, put it in a paper towel, let it sit for, a few minutes or overnight, and then I just roughly chop it so it comes out like this. And again, the nice fresh parsley, if you chop it up like this, put it in a bowl and put cellophane over it, or put it in a container where it has a tight fitting cover, this will easily last a few days. And again, it's just so fragrant, and it will make a big difference when you're finishing your soups. And last but not least, ground black pepper, freshly ground. Now, if you get it in the little containers right now, I know they have the little glass jars that have the grinder in it. They're very expensive, and for a one-time investment, you can get a nice looking wooden pepper grinder like this. And I think I got this at Target, but you can get these at a number of different places. You just fill it with the whole black peppercorns, which a whole jar of this probably costs $1, and this will last a long time. And then you can freshly grate black pepper right on your soups. And with the Parmesan, the fresh parsley, the black pepper, it will finish your soups beautifully. So, with that said, now that I've given you my soup making basics, let's get to work on our first soup, pasta e fagioli. Now we're ready to begin our pasta e fagioli, and that means pasta and beans in Italian. So we're going to make a traditional pasta and bean soup. And the first thing I'm going to do is tell you about each of the ingredients I'm going to use. First, I use 4 or 5 pieces of bacon. And what I find it's easier to cut the bacon if you pre-portion it when you first purchase it. I wrap it in packages like this and then freeze it. And then I took this out probably about 5 minutes ago because you're going to see how much easier it is to cut when it's partially frozen. And it's a nice way to just pre-portion bacon when you buy it, because you're probably not going to be using the whole pound each time. So that way you just take out what you need from the freezer each time you need to use it, whether it's for breakfast or for soups. Next ingredient, I've got 1 small diced onion. I have 2 thinly sliced carrots. I have a can of the small white beans. You can use any kind of beans that you want, but actually for this, any type of white bean would be good, because you're going to leave it in the bean juice in the can, so that's important. Don't drain that. That's going to add to the thickness of this quick pasta e fagioli. A can of cut up tomatoes. I like using the petite cut tomatoes, but any kind of tomatoes you want. If you want it chunkier, you can buy the canned stewed tomatoes and just crush it up with your hands. So whatever consistency you like. And of course, if it's during the summer that you're making this and you have fresh tomatoes available, by all means use the fresh tomatoes. 1.5 teaspoons of Italian herb. It's just a mix of different herbs. Let's see, this one has oregano, marjoram, thyme, summer savory, basil, rosemary, and sage. So we're going to use 1.5 teaspoons of that. 1 teaspoon of the chicken base, 3 cups of cold water, and a cup of any type of small pasta that you want. These are the mini shells, but there's orzo and the mini ditalini I like also. And then we're going to season last with salt and pepper. That goes in last. So why don't I show you how to dice the bacon that's partially frozen. And this just comes out so much nicer when it's partially frozen. So just going to go just like this. Again, keeping my fingers curled under. And just making nice, tiny cuts across like that. Okay? See how much easier this is when it's partially frozen? Oh, when I used to try and do this when it was thawed, just makes such a mess. Then I just take them like that. You just want to dice them a little bit. So then cut across like this. There. Okay. That's diced enough. And you know what? You can use Italian sausage if you want in this dish. That would be great too. So that would flavor it nicely. And just again, take the sausage out of the casing, crumble it up. Okay. So now what we're going to do, I'm going to start my portable burner over here. And we're going to put it on low. Let me adjust the flame, because we want this low, because what we're going to do is render the bacon. And what that means is just putting it so a slow start so the fat comes out of it, so we're going to be able to saute our carrots and onions in the bacon fat. And again, you don't want to burn it. You just want to have the fat extracted from the bacon and the soup. It's going to give this a nice smoky flavor with the bacon. So I have my bacon in my saucepan, and I'm going to let that go for a few minutes, and I'll show you what that looks like before we add the carrots and onions. All right, my bacon has been sauteing probably about 5 minutes, and let me show you what that looks like, how it's starting to look. And I just recalled that I use a center cut bacon, which is leaner than a regular bacon. So you see where it's sticking a little bit? What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of olive oil, and you can use any kind of olive oil that you want. I'm just going to add a little bit more fat to this, and that's perfectly fine to do. That's what I love about soups. They're so forgiving. You know, you can do anything with them. Add more water if you want to make them, you know, a little thinner, less water if you want to make them thicker. So now I've added a little bit of olive oil to this leaner cut of bacon that I'm using. Okay. Now I'm going to just throw in my carrots, thinly sliced carrots, and an onion. And I'm going to saute that probably about 5 more minutes. Now, this is important when soup making. You want to, again, keep it on low with the bacon in there. And you're going to saute lightly, because all you want to do is soften the onions and carrots. If you brown the onions, you will change the whole flavor of the soup. So we don't want to caramelize the onions in this recipe. We just want to soften them. And if you want, you can put a cover on this. That will keep a little bit more of the moisture in, and let that go about 5 minutes, and then we're going to add the rest of the ingredients. There are the carrots and onions, and that's what they should look like. A can of beans. Okay. We're going to add the can of tomatoes. And again, it's nice, those are the petite cut tomatoes. Mix that in there. About 1½ teaspoons of the dried Italian herb. That's it. And of course, you know, if you're like me and you like things a little bit spicy, you can add your pepperoncino to this too to make it a little hot. I'm going to add about 1 teaspoon of my chicken base in there. And again, that will add a lot of salt, so we're going to be, you know, easy on the salt until the end of this dish, and then you can taste it and adjust it for salt. My 3 cups of cold water. All right, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn up the heat on this dish and bring it to a boil and then reduce it to a simmer. And the next part of this soup making process I really want to emphasize, because when I took my class at Johnson & Wales in soup, stocks, and sauces, the most important thing that you learned in that class was how to properly simmer. And simmering, again, it's the slow extraction of flavors from the ingredients. And especially when you make your thick Italian soup, starting from the dried bean state, it becomes even more important there. But again, I want to show you what a proper simmer should look like, and it will make a difference with your soups. So you want to just simmer and not boil. So I'm going to turn the heat up on this, turn the flame up, bring it till it's just about boiling. Then I'm going to turn the flame down. So I'm going to show you what a nice simmer should look like. I'm turning my burner down, And again, the most important thing about simmering is the slow extraction of flavors from the ingredients you have in the pot. So I'm going to show you a nice simmer, and that looks just about right. Right there. Let me stir this around a little bit. Okay. See how nicely that looks? You want just little bubbles like that simmering. And we're going to simmer this for about 8 to 10 minutes. That's it. And then I'm going to check it for seasoning, for salt and pepper, and we're going to add our pasta last. And the reason for doing that is if you add the pasta too soon, it will continue to keep absorbing water, and you'll have to keep adding water to get it back to the consistency you want. So actually the heat from the soup at the end of this process will be enough to cook this small pasta. And even if you're using regular sized pasta, add the pasta the last 5 minutes and then put the cover on, and that heat from the soup will be enough to cook the pasta the rest of the way without over absorbing the water in the pot or taking over the pot. So I'll see you back here in 8 minutes when we're ready to add the pasta and finish the soup. All right, 8 minutes have gone by, and this is what my soup looks like. And right now I'm going to finish this soup, and I have tasted it, and beans and the base we added. I don't think this needs any more salt. But again, it's all your personal preference. If you need to add salt at this point, do it. But what I'm going to do now is add my mini pasta. I'm going to stir that around. I'm going to add some freshly ground black pepper, and again to taste. So put a little bit in, taste it if it needs more, and put some more in. And what I'm going to do at this point is I'm just going to bring it to a simmer again. Just to the simmer, I'm going to shut it off and put the cover on, and I will show you when the soup is finished, by the time we get done with the other soups, that the heat from the soup will completely cook the pasta. So again, there's no need to add it too early in the process so it overtakes your pan. And we're finished with this. Now I'm going to set up for my next soup, which is a creamy pumpkin soup. And this is one of my personal favorites, and this is very easy. And my husband and I recently had a party, and we made the pumpkin soup. Didn't know how it was going to go over. People absolutely loved it. So first thing I've had here, as you can see, what do I always emphasize? Mise en place. Everything in its place. So I'm ready to begin cooking. I know I have all my ingredients out here, and they're prepped and ready to go into the pot. First thing for this soup, 2 tablespoons of unsalted butter, a small onion diced. I've got 1 clove of garlic diced, 2 tablespoons of brown sugar. I'm going to use a couple of teaspoons of my chicken base, or if you want to make this completely vegetarian, you can use vegetable base. They do make the vegetable base. 2.5 cups of cold water, a 12-ounce can of evaporated milk, evaporated, not condensed milk, a can of pumpkin. I'm going to use cinnamon, nutmeg, a little bit of salt on this one, and some freshly ground black pepper. And I also want to say, if you want any of these recipes, if you don't have time to jot them down or whatever, please contact me at lindaskitchen@comcast.net. No apostrophe needed. lindaskitchen@comcast.net for these recipes. All right, so I'm ready to begin. I'm going to turn on my heat source here to low. And just like I showed you in the last soup, the pasta e fagioli, we're going to melt the butter, and then I'm going to slowly saute the onions and garlic without browning them. So when we're done that, that's going to take 2 or 3 minutes. I'm going to finish, add my next few ingredients. All right, our onions are done sauteing in the butter, and can you think of a better smell than onions sauteing in nice butter? Not too many, huh? So there we go. The onions are softened, and now I'm going to add my next few ingredients. So now what we're going to do is a couple of, we'll add the brown sugar, 2 tablespoons of brown sugar, a couple of teaspoons of the chicken base, and I'm going to add in this one, okay? We'll add water, 2½ cups of water. At this point, I am going to add a little bit of salt, probably about a ½ teaspoon, and some freshly ground pepper. And just like with the last soup, at this point, I'm going to turn up the heat. I'm going to bring it up to a boil and then quickly reduce it to a simmer. And then I'm going to simmer this for 15 minutes. You can set your timer on this one. Keep it uncovered because now what's going to happen, you're going to really concentrate those flavors. And then we're going to finish this soup. All right, 15 minutes has elapsed, and this is what the stock looks like. And now I'm going to show you a piece of equipment called an immersion blender. And if you want to make this soup nice and creamy and smooth, then you can either take it off at this point, put it in a blender, or you can finish the soup and put it in a blender. Or at this stage, I'm going to use an immersion blender and show you how you can make it creamy here. Now, if you don't want to make the soup real creamy and smooth, then skip this part. But I just think this is a neat piece of equipment, and it's designed for pureeing things on the stovetop. So again, there's where the line is. That's the maximum where you can put the this implement up to. So now we're going to just puree this. That's going to blend the flavors more, but more importantly, it's going to make it nice and smooth. And personally, that's the way I like this soup. So just mix it around the bottom like that. You can bring it up and down and see what a nice job that's doing. Then just hold it down on the bottom of the pot. Move it all around. And you know what? This would probably help incorporate the flavors more also, besides making it a smoother consistency. All right, that's pretty much it. And again, this is, I think I don't know where I picked this up, but again, you can get these anywhere, Walmart, Target, whatever. I just think it's a nice piece of equipment to have in the kitchen. So now we're ready to finish our soup. We're going to add about a ½ teaspoon of cinnamon. And again, with these spices, once you make this the first time, you'll find out what you like more of. About a ½ teaspoon of nutmeg. We're going to add the can of pumpkin. All right. This is a great dish in the fall and winter. Great soup. And my 12-ounce can of evaporated milk. I'm just going to start up the heat again. I'm going to bring this to a simmer. And at this point with this soup, since you have a milk product in it, it's very important to just stir this for 5 minutes, occasionally, just so the milk doesn't scorch. So you want to bring that up to a simmer again, and 5 minutes at a simmer, and you're done. This soup is done at that point. So I'll show you what that looks like. All right, this has been simmering 5 minutes. I want to show you this. And this soup is done. Look at how nice and creamy that is. And you can actually use this as a sauce on a pasta, maybe a nice cheese-filled pasta. So there you go, creamy pumpkin soup. My last 2 soups actually require the use of a blender, and also I want to tell you about the use of the last 2 vegetables that belong to what's called the cruciferous family. And we have broccoli and cauliflower. And the cruciferous vegetables are found to be shown by scientific research that they may prevent certain types of cancers because they're high in antioxidants. But again, one thing that is common also with cruciferous vegetables is, again, they are high in fiber, vitamins, and minerals. So let me start with the first one, broccoli. And I'll show you how to cut this because the last recipe we need to just simmer this and soften it. So instead of chopping it like this, which will make a real mess, what I do is, this is actually a broccoli crown, so it doesn't have the real thick stalk on it, and that's what you'd want to use for this soup. So pretty much all you want to do is just cut in between the smaller stalks. See what I'm doing here? And this stalk right here, this is perfectly fine to use because, again, we're going to simmer it down, and that still contains, a lot of vitamins and minerals. So what I'll do here is just cut it like that, smaller pieces, and we'll throw that in the pan. And again, we'll chop that, and again, in between the heads of broccoli. See what I'm doing here? Right, again, like this, and then you don't have to cut them that fine because, again, we will be simmering them in the broth. So you can leave them like that. Okay, use the stalks. Here we go. This is actually cutting very nice. Yep, because, if you start chopping here, it's really going to make a mess. So there we go. And that's done. And I'm going to use that for my broccoli, white bean, and cheddar soup, which is the last one I'll show you. So let me put this aside. And now the cauliflower. This is a nice head, by the way. Just peel the green off. Oh, get rid of this one. Okay. Take the green off here. And pretty much the same thing with the cauliflower. It's a tighter, compact head, though. So what I want to do is probably take out this stem first. Okay. And again, let me show you this. And pretty much just take your hand and pull these apart. Okay, again, this is going to be neater than trying to cut this. So again, you can leave them about this size because as with the broccoli, we're going to simmer this in liquid and this will soften very quickly. So again, here's that thicker stalk here on the cauliflower. So let me cut that out first. And again, you can just pull these off. And you know what? If you want to, even a little paring knife you can get in there and just start cutting them off. But this seems to be working pretty well, me just pulling them off like this. Okay? So let me finish doing this, and I'm going to get set up to show you my cauliflower leek soup. We're ready to begin our cauliflower leek soup. And I love this soup because I consider it a good base soup. Once you're done making this, you can add whatever you want to it. You can throw in some chopped zucchini. You can put in a little bit of pasta. You can throw some peas in it. You can also chop up some cooked sausage and throw that into the pot. So this is a terrific base soup, but on its own, it's great too. Nice and flavorful. So you saw what I did with the cauliflower. There's my cauliflower. I've got 7 cups of water. I'm going to add about 6 carrots. I've got olive oil. I have leeks. And I just want to explain leeks. If you've never cooked with them, they're related to the onion and garlic family, except they're milder. And I want to show you both versions that I've seen in the supermarkets. Now, they usually sell them in bunches, but for some reason they're cutting the tops of them off. Probably it's just easier to store them. So you may see them like this, and I would probably describe them as giant scallions. And scallions are just a very mild, slim onion. And I know you've probably seen those, and they're used a lot in Asian cooking. So here's the leeks. And here's the other version it comes in. I just wanted to show you the whole leek also, and I'll show you how to prepare these in a minute. Okay, so we have our leeks. I'm also going to use a large chopped onion. I've got a diced potato, a couple of tablespoons of dried parsley, and some salt. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start the base like I did with the other 2 soups and saute the onion and leeks in some olive oil, soften that up, and we'll add the rest of the ingredients after that. So, but before I begin that, let me show you how to prepare a leek. And we're going to use 2 leeks in this recipe. Again, nice mild onion. You don't use any of the dark green parts. So I would say on this one's a lot smaller than the others. So see where it's just starting to turn light green? That's about where you want to cut it. And you can use some of the light green, but any of this dark stuff is going to be way too tough to use. So let me put that aside. And then I'm going to, of course, cut off the roots. Okay, just like that. Now all you do is you just cut this right down the middle. Right down the middle lengthwise like this. Okay? When you open it up, see the different layers? Sometimes these have mud in them, so that's why you want to slit them open like that. And then I'll show you if they do have a little bit of sand or mud in them. We'll go right over here to the sink. And again, you just fan them out, hold them like that. Put on some cold water and just rinse them like that. You'd want to rinse them anyway, but I just wanted to show you how cut them open first and then rinse them. So you make sure you get any of that sand out, and then you can wash the outside of them at the same time. All right, now I take my 2 halves and I put them flat side down on my cutting board. And what I'm going to show you here is, again, just cut them nice and thin. So we'll lay them side by side. And again, nice and thin. Curl your fingers under. There you go. Your leeks are sliced. My leeks are cut. I've got 2 leeks here. I've got a large onion. And I'm going to start this soup just the way I did the last 2 with what's called sautéing my aromatics. And in cooking school, that's basically garlic, onions, leeks, carrots, that sort of thing. And you started off sautéing it, so again, it releases the nice flavors at first. So I'm going to take care of that. Again, just the leeks and the onions and some olive oil, just until they're wilted but not brown, and then we will finish this soup off. Now I've got done sautéing my onions and leeks in the pan, and look at how nice and soft these are. And I'm ready to finish this soup, the cauliflower leek. So here we go. 7 cups of cold water in the pot. I'm going to finish this on my stove. 1 potato diced. Okay. The cauliflower, I showed you how to break that up. That all goes in. Got 6 carrots. I like a lot of carrots. I think the original recipe had 2, but I love carrots, so let's put those in there. A couple tablespoons of dried parsley. And again, you can use fresh, but you need about 3 times this amount for the fresh. And again, with fresh herbs, add them at the end of the cooking process. Dried, you need to add them at least 15-20 minutes before your product is done to release all the flavors from the dried. So we're going to use the dried parsley in there. 1 teaspoon of salt. Okay, and again, if you want more flavor, you can also add base to this. If you want to add chicken base instead of the salt, you can do that, 1 teaspoon or 2 of the chicken base. And then we're going to put this back on the stove. I'm going to stir this all together now, put a cover on it, simmer 15 to 20 minutes. That's it. Just put a fork through the cauliflower as soon as it's tender, which again will only take 15 to 20 minutes. This soup is done, and I will show you how we're going to finish it off in the blender. All right, well, my cauliflower leek is simmering on the stovetop. What I did in the meantime was with those, remember the broccoli crown that I showed you? And by the way, that was a 1-pound broccoli crown, and that's what you need for this last soup. And it's a broccoli white cheddar bean soup. And this is nice and cheesy and rich. And again, this soup also you can use as a sauce. So what I did in the meantime was I took 3 cups of water, 2 teaspoons of chicken base, and put in that broken up head of broccoli. Simmered it for 8 minutes until the broccoli was nice and tender. You can put a cover on that. Okay, now this is after 8 minutes, came out nice and tender, and I'm going to show you how to finish this soup. I took 1 can of cannellini beans, or any white beans will work. Throw that in there. Then I'm going to put in a cup of extra sharp cheddar cheese. If you want to make it even lighter, then put in 1 cup of light cheddar cheese, which is how I made this soup the last time, and it came out delicious also. So we put that in there. The cheddar cheese. I'm going to put in some nice ground black pepper. Okay. And of course you can season this again after you put it in the blender. I'm going to just mix this up a bit. Still very, very hot. Okay. I'm going to pour this into my blender. And be careful with the hot liquids. Try to pour away from you. Okay? And this is, I think, probably a 2-quart blender. So you might have to do this in batches if your blender is smaller. So just take it, ladle it in there, and then do this. Part of the process. Okay. There we go. I'm going to put it on my blender. On. And we are going to, let's puree. Probably just a couple of minutes. Let it get nice and incorporated. All right. There we go. Maybe a minute or so. Let's see what that looks like. I'd say that's done. Turn that off. Yeah, we'll remove this. For safety's sake, take off the cover here and ladle it into the bowl. Oh, look at that. See how nice and rich that is and creamy? And again, you can use this as a sauce. So let's ladle it into our bowl. And you know, really with this one, I wouldn't use any garnish at all. Look at how beautiful that looks. A nice green color, nice and rich and thick. And here we are. And let's see. Nice and cheesy and creamy. Delicious. We've got hot soup left here, and let's say that you made this soup and you had to run out for the afternoon. You don't really want to leave this cooling on the stove all afternoon because, you know, now we know a lot of bacteria develops and that sort of thing. So I am going to show you the method that I learned in cooking school on how we cool down soup rapidly so it's safe. So I'm going to pour this hot soup back into the pot. And if you're making soup exclusively on the stove in the pot, same method applies. Take this, bring it over to your sink. Another reason why I want to show you how to do this is because a lot of people just put hot soup right into the refrigerator, and therefore it raises the temperature of everything in the refrigerator, which creates more spoilage. So I'm going to take, I've got my hot soup in the pan, and I'm going to fill the sink with cold water, and you want the water and ice to come about halfway up the side of the pan. So, okay, it looks like we've got enough water there. Now I'm going to add ice into the sink. Okay, now I put my soup pan in the sink with cold water and ice, and let that stay 15-20 minutes. Stir it every once in a while, and after 15 to 20 minutes, that will be cooled down to a nice temperature where you can put it right in your refrigerator. So how do you like that? All right, I've removed my cauliflower leek soup from the top of the stove, and that only took 15 minutes. You'll find cauliflower cooks very quickly. So why don't I just show you that? Here, let me grab one of the cauliflower out. And see how nice and tender that is? It's just falling apart right now, and that's what you want. So, what I'm going to do, some of the cauliflower chunks were left a little bit big, so I'm just going to take a whisk and break it up a little. You can break it up with a fork a little bit too. Just break up the bigger flowerets of cauliflower. That's all I'm doing here. And then what I'm going to do with this soup is I'm going to puree about half of it in the blender. Now this particular soup, you can leave it chunky like this, or you can puree half of it, put it back in the pot and leave it somewhat chunky, and then you have a creaminess in the background, which a lot of people, when I've served this, thinks that this actually has cream in it, and it doesn't. Or you can take the whole pot and puree it all in batches. So it all depends on the texture that you like, and that's what I love about this soup. And again, I want to emphasize that this is a good base soup, so throw in whatever you want to this after. You have any leftover cooked veg, leftover cooked meats are great in this, peas, zucchini, even a little bit of pasta, but this is a good one and very healthy. So let's just take about half. This probably made about 3/4, so I'm going to ladle in, I don't know, probably about, most of this filled. And I'll show you what that looks like after it's done. And then we're going to put all of these beautiful soups in bowls, and I'm going to show you how to garnish them. But, okay. You know what? That's good. And again, this is only the way I prefer it. I always puree half of this, then throw it back in, because I do like to keep the consistency a little bit chunky. So, put that on again and puree. This is only going to take a few seconds, not even a minute. So 20, 30 seconds. And watch that. All right. See how nice and creamy that looks? Look at that. I'm going to pour that back into my soup pot. Be careful. Step back and pour away from you if you can. And here we go. I'm going to mix that back in. And you know what? Again, I've told you how great of a base soup that this is. I think what I'm going to do is to add a little bit more color to this is I'm going to go into my freezer, get some garden peas. And you know what? I'm going to throw a few handfuls in. And again, the heat from this soup will cook these, or you can put it back on the stove top and simmer for a few more minutes. But this is so hot right now, I have no doubt that that's going to cook those peas to where I need them to be. So that's it for the cauliflower leek. And now let me put all of these beautiful soups in dishes and show you how to garnish them. And we'll go from there. We have our beautiful soups together here now, and now I'm going to show you how to simply garnish them. The first one, creamy pumpkin soup. I found some pumpkin seeds, and these are difficult to find, and believe it or not, where did I find these? At Willow Tree Poultry Farm right down the street from me. So let's garnish this with a few pumpkin seeds. Okay? Just like 5, that'll do it for that one. I told you the broccoli cheddar white bean soup I don't think really needs any garnish, but if you can think of something, go ahead. I think that looks beautiful the way it is. Our cauliflower leek, what I'm going to do with that is grate a little bit of my Parmesan cheese, and I told you earlier in the show that I'd show you the 2 graters I have. This one, quick, you just take a little chunk of the Parmesan, and again, just grate it right over like that. How's that? See how simple that is? And it's so much better. This will taste so much better than the canned stuff. And also I would probably put a little bit of sprinkle of parsley on this one, my fresh parsley that I showed you earlier that I chopped up. And you know what? A little bit of freshly ground black pepper. Okay, that one's done. Now for my thick pasta visual, the first soup that we put together, see how nice and thick that came out? Now again, if you don't like it that thick, just add less pasta. That's all, but that's a nice hearty, thick Italian soup. So with this one, I'm going to show you my other grater, and this is a little bit fancier, and I like using this when I have company, and it's just nice. You just put the cheese right in there. Look at this, all comes apart like this. Put it right in there. You can find this at any kitchen store and probably, again, Target, Walmart. They all have terrific kitchen sections now. Even at the supermarket, you can probably find this. And I'm going to grate some Parmesan over the top of that. Look at that. Nice, huh? Finish this with a little bit of fresh parsley. And with this one, you know what? I'm going to put a drizzle of good olive oil over the top. Oh, look at that. And I'm also going to finish this with a little bit of fresh grated black pepper. So there you go. Our soups are garnished. And what else do we need to go with these? Some nice bread. And I just want to say I got this. This is a ciabatta bread that I got at Super Stop and Shop. A lot of the supermarkets now have terrific bakery departments and are getting some good breads in. And I've got some nice olive oil to go with that for dipping. And also I just want to mention, you like good bread and they bake it on the premises. I go to Seven Stars Bakery sometimes on Hope Street in Providence, on the east side of Providence, but it's close to the Pawtucket line, so it's very easy to get to off the highway. And they have a lot of terrific breads there. So if you're taking a trip down that way into Rhode Island, make sure that you stop there for some good bread. Well, that being said, I hope I've showed you some good simple soups that you can make on those cold wintry days. And again, I invite you to contact me at my email address, lindaskitchen@comcast.net, and with any questions or any of the recipes that you want. And please feel free to contact me. That's what I like to do. I'd like to answer questions, and I want to show you how to make some nice, simple dishes. And I thank you for being with me this week, and I look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.